Hey, Tim. Good evening, everybody. We are glad that you're back with us tonight for our midweek Bible study and devotional. For our services tonight, John's got our singing, and Justin has the invitation. And I'm going to ask Derek. Derek, would you lead us in our prayer that will dismiss us afterward? Do you mind doing that? Him visiting with us tonight, we're glad that he's here. Just a few announcements of updates that we want to make everybody aware of. Found out today that Cindy Jones is in the hospital. She has a blood clot in her foot or in her leg, and they're going to keep her there to try to do some more tests and find out some things. So just keep Cindy in your prayers because she didn't like hospitals. None of us do, I guess, but just keep her in your thoughts over the next few days in hopes that that's able to break free and she's able to get back home. Other sick that we have, we continue to announce the ones that we've had that we've been mentioning. Janice Warren, please continue to remember Janice Warren as she's looking at treatments for breast cancer. We still have Steve Shelton that we're asking you to pray for. He's undergoing his treatments. Also, Judy Krieger, Peggy Irons, and Lori Wallace. We see Ellen here with us tonight. Just continue to remember those people as well. In the back, there are some shirts. I think they're all kid sizes. There may be some of the tan shirts. There may be some adult sizes in that. If you want one, take one. If you want two, take three. We want to get rid of those. We've had them here for a while, and we're doing some cleaning up while we're getting ready to start New Berea. So if you just go through and grab one of those, or they're old youth group shirts or VBS shirts that we're just trying to clean out. They're back in the foyer. We've done really well on the instant potatoes. We're going to leave that in there for the rest of the week. Several of you brought some, and I think I moved about 9 boxes today, so that's good. We appreciate that. We'll update that to something else in a few days for Sunday's bulletin, but please just continue to, when you go to the grocery store, just pick up something extra, and pick up something that you would eat, not like canned beets or something. Pick up something that most people would eat. Not something unusual, and we'll make sure it gets to the people that need it. Tonight, we are going through with a dry run, I think, for New Berea. So when we dismiss from here, now y'all tell me if I'm wrong with this, but when we dismiss from here after the closing prayer, the kids will just go back to the hall back there, and their guides will pick them up and tell them where to go, and they're going to be going as a dry run tonight to get introduced to the program. But Sunday is our big day. We're planning a big deal with this. We're planning a ribbon cutting, an opening up. We have purchased Bibles for all the kids. Every kid will get a new Bible as they start the program, and we're just really excited about this. There's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this, and a lot of hard work that will continue to go in this, because this is a program that is going to have to be maintained and kept up, and we got people on it. We got people that are ready to do it, and we got kids that are ready to get involved in it and get learning again, and we're excited about it. You're going to be receiving something in the mail about it. We're also, Justin and I are going to do a little video this week and post that on Facebook. Share that. Share that if you have a Facebook account, that because there are other congregations that may not be doing class yet. And this gives their parents an opportunity to see they could come here at least to get the class. We don't want to steal members from other congregations. We want them to be able to continue to worship there, but we want to be able to make sure these kids get an education, and by opening our New Berea. Not only that, but we'll be doing our adult classes as well, and I'm just as excited about that. We'll be over here in our live class. We're going to be starting Philippians. Well, you'll find out when you get the letter, hopefully tomorrow, Friday. There's a list of all the new classes and their titles and what we're going to be studying in those. So we're really looking forward to that. So are you doing Zoom tomorrow night? Are the ladies doing a Zoom tomorrow night? Yes, they're doing a Zoom tomorrow night. I think it's just kind of been the same ones here lately. Ladies, if it doesn't take, how long does that thing last? 20, 30 minutes? Depends on how long Leah talks. Yeah. But if you have just a few minutes, you can put your headphones in and just listen to the study of what they're doing and the prayers that they do. That's an awesome thing that they're doing. The camaraderie that they have with that. Just talk to them tonight. Find out how to get on, and they'll send you an invite if they have to, and that'll be a great plan for you. That's all that. Well, there's something in the bulletin. February 21st. I haven't even mentioned this with the elders, but it's still in the bulletin. We're doing a men's meeting. I assume that is still on. So just men of the congregation will be doing that. It's a Sunday. We'll have that around probably 4 o'clock before church service here, and then we'll have our worship. Thank you for being here. So let's get started. Let's all stand as we sing.
There's within my heart a melody, Jesus whispers sweet and low. Fear not, I am with thee, peace be still, in all of thy sevenfold. Jesus, 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 sweetest name I know, fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go, feasting on the riches of His grace, resting neath His sheltering wing, always looking on His smiling face. That is why I shout and sing. Jesus, 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 sweetest name I know, fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go. Soon He's coming back to welcome me, far beyond the starry sky. I shall wing my flight to worlds unknown. I shall live with Him on high. Jesus, 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 sweetest name I know, fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go. Please be seated. There is beyond the azure blue a God concealed from human sight. He tinted skies with heavenly hue and framed the worlds with His great might. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man. He is our God, the great I am. Our God who shone upon a tree, a life was willing there to give, that He from sin might set man free, and evermore with Him could live. There is a God, there is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man. He is our God, the great I am. The invitation song this evening is entitled Jesus is Tenderly Calling.
If you want to, you can go ahead and turn your Bibles to Luke chapter 10, I believe, once I get to my page. Excuse me, Luke chapter 11, one chapter later. Luke chapter 11, starting in verse 5. You know, if you've ever seen the movie Sling Blade, it's a very interesting movie. It's got a guy in it, and he talks like this, Carl Childers. He talks like that. It's a very funny movie in a way, and it's also kind of a weird and scary and awkward movie. But it's got some funny parts in it. And there's been some other stuff done that people have used that same voice that Carl uses in that. It's got Billy Bob Thornton that plays him, and a very interesting movie. But one of those scenes happens during that movie. Carl's staying at this family's house in their garage, I believe, and just in the middle of the night, just gets up, goes to the couple's bedroom, just opens the door. And he's standing there with a hammer in his hand. And they wake up, and they said, "What do you want, Carl?" He said, "I want to be baptized." And he says, "Oh, okay, we can take care of that in the morning. We'll call the preacher in the morning. Just go back to bed." And the guy says, "Why do you have that hammer in your hand?" He says, "Well, I woke up with it." So he just walks out. But he comes in the middle of the night, just storms in their bedroom, wanting to be baptized. It's very weird, but his voice is hilarious, and I've listened to stories from people talking in that same voice, and it's funny. But you know, there's many times in our lives where somebody will just show up. Something random will just happen. And sometimes we don't respond in the best way. Sometimes we even avoid that situation. Well, in Luke chapter 11, we have a similar story. Not a guy coming in your bedroom with a hammer in his hand wanting to be baptized, but it's somebody persistently knocking at your door. And this is what it says in Luke chapter 11, verse 5. "And he said to them, 'Which of you shall have a friend and go to him at midnight and say to him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves. For a friend of mine has come to me on his journey, and I have nothing to set before him. And he will answer from within and say, Do not trouble me, the door is now shut, and my children are with me in bed. I cannot rise and give to you. I say to you, though he will not rise and give to him because he is his friend, yet because of his persistence, he will rise and give him as many as he needs.'" Of course, this is Jesus speaking to the people there listening, and so this is kind of somewhat, I don't guess you call it a parable, but it's very similar to a parable. And so he explains it later in verses 9 through 13 right after. He says, "So I say to you, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. If a son asks for bread from any father among you, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a serpent instead of a fish? Or if he asks for an egg, will he offer him a scorpion? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him?" So the lesson here in Luke chapter 11, and verses 5 through 13, the lesson here comes from this persistent friend. That's the theme of it. That's the point that Jesus makes here, and we'll explain that in a second. But there's also a lesson we can learn from the other man in the story. You know, that friend, the guy that was, this door was being knocked on, being woken up in the middle of the night. He's already in bed, and this friend comes and knocks on his door. He's very reluctant to give what his friend needed. You know, we do the same thing a lot. You know, when you notice someone in need, how quick are you to respond? You know, we really don't know when things are going to happen. You know, there's a lot of unexpected situations in life, but it's not when they happen that's the problem, but it's really how you react that matters. Are you going to avoid the situation, or are you going to take care of it, even though the time may not seem right to you? But then again, our time, the way we perceive time, is not the way God perceives it. Our time is not God's time. The time might not seem right to you, but according to God, it may be the right time. But now let's get to the persistent friend. How persistent are you in asking God for what you need? You know, this friend kept knocking until he got what he needed. If you want something from God, then ask it. Verses 9 and 10, so I say to you, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks it will be opened. Verses 11 through 13 seem kind of weird. When you read it, it says in verse 11, if a son asks for bread from any father among you, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a serpent instead of a fish? Who would do such a thing? But oftentimes we don't trust God enough to give us what we need, or we don't trust God enough so we don't even ask, or we ask once and we give up. But he says in verse 13, if you then, being evil, we as human beings, being sinners and have sin in our life, and we're not righteous in the way of God, if you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts, if we know how to give a good gift to somebody, how much more will our Heavenly Father, who is perfect and glorious and mighty, be able to give us what we need and what we ask for? God is not going to give you something you don't need. And even we as humans know how to give gifts. So if you want something, ask for it. If you're subject to the invitation tonight, if you need prayers from here, or if you need to ask God something, then do it. Ask Him. Be persistent. Don't ask once. Don't ask twice. Ask until you get it, and keep asking for more and more. If you want wisdom, ask for more wisdom. If you want more patience, ask for it. If you want your faith to be stronger, ask for it. Because if you're praying about it and you're thinking about it and it's on your mind, it's going to happen. And if you tell God about it, He'll help you with it, because He says He will. And He keeps His promises. So if you need any prayers tonight, or if you need to ask for something from God, or you just want to be baptized tonight, we'd love to help you with that. Whatever your need is, please come as we stand and sing.
Is tenderly calling thee home, calling today, calling today. Why from the sunshine of love wilt thou roam, farther and farther away? Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today. Jesus is calling the weary to rest, calling today, calling today. Bring Him thy burden and thou shalt be blessed. He will not turn thee away. Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today. Jesus is pleading, oh, list to His voice. Hear Him today, hear Him today. They who believe on His name shall rejoice. Quickly arise and away. Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today.
Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for the beautiful day you've blessed us with, and we thank you for this time we have now to come to you and sing praises to you and hear lessons from your word. And please allow us to take these lessons and apply them to our lives and be shining examples for you each and every day of our lives. And please be with those that have been affected by the virus and in any way, and just watch over them and give them strength during this time. And please be with all those that have been affected in any aspect, and just please watch over them. And please be with us as we depart from here, and watch over us and keep us safe until the next point in time. In Christ's name, amen.
Well, it seemed like they've got a little backup back in New Berea back there. But they're going to get it. They're going to get it straightened out. It's good to be here this evening. If you didn't get your lesson, they're out there on the table, and I want to apologize. I pushed a button somewhere wrong, and it gave you a whole mess of sheets, but there's really only 3 of them, or maybe 4. But you got them all. I guess you just got plenty of paper to make notes on whatever. But the lesson today is the darker the sin. Now, this is Brother Bill Bajent's. In the main thing, he says, God's grace is deeper, stronger, wider, and more surprising than we can imagine. Last week we noted what grace was and how it's defined and how it's used in the Old and New Testament. And therefore today we're going to be looking at a specific thing of Abraham and Lot. As he says here, he says, Abraham's relative Lot is not a man we associate with grace. And that's very true. You know, when we look at Lot, we find that he made some critical errors and seemingly continued to make those until he straightened himself out after all of these things that happened with Abraham and those other people in Sodom. We know that we see the problems that he had, and of course the thing that we look at is, first of all, I guess the first thing that we see him and Abraham looking at is the problem that they're having over the grazing of their flocks. God has made them prosper beyond anything that they could imagine. And what happened was that the flocks of Abraham and Lot became so great that they could not put them at the same place to graze. There were too many of them. And it seems that the men of Abraham and the men of Lot, his herdsmen, kind of got at a little off center with each other, I guess you'd say. You know, this is our place and that's not yours, and everything that goes on there. But we noticed that it left Abraham with a predicament that he was going to solve. We remember this because it's such a great thing that anybody would do for anybody else. What we have here is that Abraham just simply says, if you look out here onto the plain, if you want to go to the left, I'll go to the right. And if you want to go to the right, I'll go to the left. It doesn't matter. I'll go wherever you don't want to. Well, this is where the grace part kind of gets a little puzzling, because Lot is going to choose the better part of what lays before him. We know that in Genesis chapter 13, this is where all of this takes place. And if we get down there to verse 12, I think it's printed there for you. It said that Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, pitched his tent toward Sodom. Well, the first choice that Lot made to take the land to the right or left, the better watered plains there, that seems to us to be a good choice, even though you might think, well, why would he do that to his uncle? Why would he not give his uncle the better grazing land? Because we know that Lot is being prospered because he is associated with Abraham. Lot in and of himself might have done well, but he was doing very, very well by being associated to Abraham. And so he says, this is what I want. I want this well-watered plains, and therefore Abraham said, very well, and they parted company. Now, I don't think that we need to think that, they just left each other and then didn't see each other, didn't communicate, because I think they actually did. But we notice that Sodom lay in the area that Lot chose. And therefore, being a man of great wealth, he gave up living in tents. He gave up the herdsman's life, you might say, and he moved inside Sodom. Now, the people at Sodom, they accepted him. He was, again, like I said, a rich man, and no doubt many of them wanted to have his favor. But we noticed that things happened that were probably unseen. We noticed that he pitched his tent toward Sodom and eventually chose to live in Sodom, and he raised his children in Sodom. We know that God, in talking to Abraham in Genesis chapter 13 at verse 14, said, "The Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward. For the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and thy seed forever." So even though Abraham made this great sacrifice to give Lot what he wanted, and he would take the other direction, God makes sure that Abraham knows that all of this is going to be yours. You are the recipient of this because you are the one that I have favored, and therefore we see the grace of God, at least in that particular point, that God did not cause Abraham to lose anything because he gave Lot the choice, and Lot chose the better. But we notice that that's where it began. Lot was having a bad time. He was there in the city, and some seem to think that he may have been a kind of a judge in the city, and that may be true or not. But we find that he was sitting at the gate of the city as people came in and came out. Now, he may have been some official that had to okay their coming in and going out. I don't really know. The Bible is silent on that. But we do know that Sodom was not a good place. It was a awful place. We know that he was there with his wife, and from what I understand, his wife had been with him the whole time. She was from Ur. He did not pick a wife from Sodom, but he had two daughters who had been raised there, at least for part of their lives in Sodom. And he had two sons-in-law, and I believe that they probably were from Sodom, that they were engaged, as we would put it, to his daughters. They had not married, because we understand that his daughters at the time of the confrontation with the angels and the city people, that he said, "My daughters are virgins," and of course they had never been married. So they were betrothed, and we know that in the Old Testament that the betrothal of people was just like marriage, that if you were betrothed to a woman and something happened, you would actually have to divorce her rather than just bidding her adieu. It was a serious thing. So these young men were not part of Lot's family as of yet, officially. So we notice the things that happened. Lot had to be rescued twice by Abraham, and of course there was nothing except he was kin. He was Abraham's flesh. He was his nephew, and there he wasn't going to allow things to happen that would jeopardize Lot any more than, of course, it already had. I don't know exactly how much Abraham knew about Lot and Sodom, because he answered the call that Lot needed to be, and therefore he went to his aid. Now, it seems a little unusual here because they were fighting. What had happened is a king had come and taken Sodom, and he had taken away the riches of Sodom. And not only that, it specifically says that he took away the riches of Lot. He took his riches and his people and everything. Well, when Abraham got the news of this, of course, he was going to do something to get Lot back and all of the things that he had, and that's just exactly what happened. We notice that this leader that had taken everybody away was a leader that had vassals, or he had control of Sodom. He was the lord over Sodom, and I suppose Gomorrah as well. But he was the one that was telling them what was going to happen. Now, there were other cities that were also involved in this, and for some reason, at this time, they decided to rebel against him. They said, we're not going to take his leadership anymore. We're not going to pay the tribute to him anymore. We're going to just stop doing it. Well, that was one thing that they had to live with, because what happened is that king sent armies there and took what he wanted. And part of what he took was Lot and his belongings and his people. So Abraham decided, we're going to have to take part in getting Lot back and everything that he had. You'll notice that Abraham was fighting now on the side of Sodom. Sodom was now an ally of him. But what happened? Abraham was aided by three allies that we know of, and that was Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. These were three cities that took Abraham as leader, and they went out to get these things back. They had the advantage of surprise. They slipped up on these people at night, and they attacked from several different directions. The attack was against an overconfident force. The people that were fighting against Sodom and the other cities had gone in there and taken everything back. They were very confident, hey, we've done this, we've got all this. And of course, they were tired because they'd been fighting. But we noticed that Abraham took his people in there and attacked, and they overcame them. Now, one thing that some of the people in the commentary say is that we're not talking about this enemy having hundreds of thousands of men, nor Abraham having that many. They just weren't that many. There may have been hundreds involved instead of thousands. But we notice that Abraham, when he decided that he was going to go and do these things, that he actually picked out 318 men that were going to go with him to fight against this king. Now, of course, that's 318 for him, and then I don't know how many the other three cities had, but nonetheless, they went, and of course, they overcame this king, and they were going to have to now decide what to do with what they've got. Sodom said or talked to them about what they had won back, and Abraham was listening to them, what they wanted to do, and they said, what we would like you to do is for you to give us back our people. The ones that were captured and taken away, said, you give us back our people, and you can keep all the spoil. You can keep everything else that you got. It doesn't matter to us. All we want is our people back. Well, we noticed that Abraham found that to be plausible, and that he could do that, and therefore he gives them their people back. So you have to remember that he is an ally of Sodom, even though it's a wicked place and undone before God. So he has a taste of what these Sodomites are, the kind of people they are. We notice, too, that the other time that Abraham had to help Lot out, and this is when God says that he is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah as well. Abraham, of course, was interested in Sodom because that's where Lot and his family and all of his possessions and these things were. So Abraham goes and starts talking to God about this place of Sodom. God said, I'm going to level the place. I'm going to destroy everything there, all the people, everything. And this upset Abraham because Lot was there, Lot and his family. And therefore, Abraham wanted to try to, I guess you would say, bargain with God, reason with God about the people that were there. You know, to say, I am going to destroy this particular city and everybody in it, that's a big and sweeping thing to say. Now, God has the right to do that. And I think we can see from the problems that they had that God had a very good right to wipe them off the face of the earth. They were very perverse and bad people. So Abraham tries to intercede with God for Sodom. And we know that he said, would you destroy the righteous with the wicked? And of course, the answer there is no, we don't want to do that. And so he starts talking to God about how many righteous people they would need to find there before God would spare the city. Now you can imagine that in the city, and I don't know what the population might have been, but let's suppose they could find 300 righteous people that were serving God and doing what they're supposed to. Would you destroy the city and those 300 people? Well, God wouldn't. Now, they started out a lot less than that. And we know that Abraham got God down to 10 righteous people. If you could find 10 righteous people, would you not destroy the city? And God said, yes, that's okay. Now, notice the counting here. If it's Lot and his wife, his 2 daughters, and their son-in-laws, then what we've got there is 6 righteous people to start with. Now we've only got to find 4 more. The problem was they couldn't. Now, I'm not saying that the sons-in-laws were converted, that they were righteous. I don't really know much about them, and we only have one thing about them, and that's when Abraham went to them and said, we've got to leave. These angels say this place is going to be destroyed, and we got to go. Well, these boys, men, I don't know, but they thought he was joking. They thought he was telling some big joke. And, of course, they just laughed at him, and he couldn't wait. He couldn't wait to try to, to get them to do this because they didn't want to, and he was going to have to talk them into it because the angels are ready to destroy this place. And so he has to leave them behind. We kind of have to think, do you think that God bargained with Abraham because he knew he wasn't going to find the number that he wanted? Do you think that this was just, you might say a waste of time in God's perspective? God is bargaining with Abraham. Do you think that he was doing that because he knew well that there weren't that many righteous people there? You think that God knew that? Well, I think he did too. I think God knew how many people were there. But I think it's one of those things that we might think of as grace, that God allowed Abraham to try to bargain for this town. Abraham didn't know anything that much about these people and what was going on there. But we do know that he was concerned about people being killed by God. And therefore he starts this bargaining, and we know that God lets it get down to 10 righteous people, and still there weren't any. There were not even 10 righteous people there. So we know that God gave Abraham an answer, and that is that there are not 10 here. Now, I don't know if Abraham went through the city, crying aloud, righteousness, those of you believe in Jehovah God and all these things, try to get them together or whatever. I don't know. But they found that there were not that many people. So we have that the city is going to be lost. Now, when we find out that the city is going to be lost, we then find that we've got these angels that come there to Sodom and come in the city and are going to destroy it. Now, we find that, as we said a moment ago, that Lot is sitting at the gate, and he sees these two men come in. I don't think he knew who they were at the beginning. But he said, y'all can come and stay with me. The idea was, the angel said, no, we'll just stay here in the courtyard. It's a big place. We can just bed down here. And Lot says, no, said, you can't do that. Now, Lot knew why. Lot knew that the men of that city would not allow these men to simply come and go. And again, that's exactly what happened. The men finally gave in, the angels gave in and went into Lot and were there behind the door when this crowd gathered outside, beating on the door, send these men out to us. We know that they had things that they wanted to do that were really too bad to talk about. But it was homosexuality, and they wanted these men to come out so that they could know them. Well, Lot could not allow that to happen. Now, we understand that a traveler, in the days of Lot and Abraham, they couldn't just stay anywhere. We speak most of the time, even in the New Testament, if you were a traveler going somewhere and you wanted to go to an inn or some place that was to take in people to stay the night, these places were nothing but places for harlots and bad people. And so the Jews had to take in each other. They had to say, no, you come stay with me and everything will be okay. And it was really just about a commandment that if you took someone into your house as a guest, that it was your responsibility to care for them, to protect them, and do anything and everything you could to help anything bad not to befall them. Well, that was Lot's situation. He went out himself and closed the door behind him, and he was talking to these gentlemen. Well, gentlemen, that's a turn of a phrase, isn't it? They were awful people. And he says, you can't do this. You just can't do this. It's just not right. Well, that did not hold any kind of effect upon these men. And so he said, well, what about this? What about I give you my 2 virgin daughters, never seen men, and you can do what you will with them. Do what you will with them. Now, a lot of people have looked at Lot and thought, this is just unbelievable that he would offer his daughters to these perverts rather than handing over these 2 men. But he did. He was trying to protect them every way that he could. But of course, these men that were on the outside said, no, we don't want that. We want the 2 men. Well, he goes back inside, and the angels then take over. They strike blind everybody that's out there, and so there's not going to be a problem about them giving them any more trouble because they're blind. And so now we find that the whole plan is revealed. This place is going to be leveled, burned to the ground, burned to ashes, and you're going to have to leave. Now, it looks as though he was able to take anybody with him that he wanted to, and obviously that would be his family. He took his wife and his 2 daughters and tried to get his sons-in-law to go with him, but they wouldn't. So actually what we've got here is we've got 4 people leaving this great city, and that's going to be it. They're going to be the only ones that are going to be saved out of all of these people. So that's exactly what happens. As Lot and his wife and his daughters, they escape. The angels tell them before they leave, do not look back. Don't look back at what's happening here. Some people have said that Lot's wife was from Sodom, and I wouldn't argue either way. One reference that I found, and it didn't give a Bible verse or anything, but said that she was from Ur, that she had traveled with him as he left with his uncle Abraham. But some say that she was from Sodom, and therefore all of her life, her memories, her family, everything is back there, and so she does. She turns and looks back. Well, immediately she is turned to a pillar of salt, and there are Jews today that say they can take you where that pillar was, but I don't think they probably could. But the idea is that she was punished because she didn't follow God's rule for them leaving the place. Then we get into even more trouble. What happens is Lot and his daughters escape, and wife is now a pillar of salt. Sons-in-laws perished with the city of Sodom, and they get free, and that night or sometime afterward, the daughters get the idea that there's not another living man on the face of the earth. Now, you know, that's a little bit of a strain. As they were running away, they went to the city of Zoar, and they stayed there. I don't think they stayed long, but these daughters could have seen, you know, here's people, here's men, whatever. But whatever their situation and whatever their thought, they agreed together that, you know, they were going to get Daddy drunk tonight, and one of us is going to lay with him. And then tomorrow night, we're going to get him drunk again, and the other one of us is going to lay with him. The thing about it, and the great problem with this is, of course, that's a sin in and of itself. And that was a sin straight from Jehovah God. You don't do that. And so they did. And it happened that they both conceived. And that's a little bit unusual, but it happened. And out of that union came two of the Jews' worst enemies. They came from those, it was the Amalekites, and who was the other one? Amorites, maybe? I have it in my notes. I'll run across it in just a minute. Amorites and Moabites, okay. And we know what kind of problems the Jews had with these two groups, but they are the offspring of Lot and his daughters. And of course, it doesn't seem like there's, you know, that's just the way it was. That's the way it was. If we look at Luke chapter 17, there's something of interest there in verse 28 through 32. Says, likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat and they drank and they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. Now, you know, in that particular verse, immediately, what do you think of when you hear that right there? Have you heard those words with some other thing that's going to happen or had happened? Well, it's the flood. You know, the same thing was described about the flood. These people are going about their business and marrying and giving in marriage and all that kind of thing. But we know that that was going to come to an end because the flood was coming. It says, but the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the days when the Son of Man is revealed. In that day, he which shall be upon the housetop, and his stuff in the house, let him not come down and take it away, and he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Remember Lot's wife. When these people, and us, I think with we could be in this group. When Jesus comes again, we are not going to take time to go back and get, pack a suitcase, anything, because we're not going to need any of that stuff. We don't need to go back and get our gold and our silver because that's what they paved streets with in heaven. You're not going to need that. So just like the people that might have come out of Sodom because they got word of what was going to happen but had to go back and get stuff, he warns us that in the coming of Jesus, we do not know, there is not a hint, nobody knows when Jesus is coming again. Nobody but the Father in heaven, Matthew chapter 24. But we do know that he's coming someday. And these people knew that Sodom was going to be destroyed. They may not have had a sense of urgency about this, but let us know that these things are urgent. We need to have an urgency about the second coming of Christ. We need to have, and Lot needed to have the urgency, as did all the people of Sodom. And we know that they fell on one side or the other, just as when Jesus comes again, there's only going to be two groups. So he mentions here in Luke, talking about that, just remember Lot's wife. She looked back. So we need to understand that. Again, while we appreciate biblical fairness and balance, the account of Lot in Genesis ends on a terrible note. If that were the end of the biblical account of Lot, we would never think of him as an example of God's grace. Now, they put a lot of, Brother Bajans puts a lot of emphasis on the fact that when the things about Lot end in Genesis, that's not the end of it. That's not the end of the story. And I guess that's a good place to stop and start from 2 Peter chapter 2 next week as we come together. Hope you can be back. Hope you can be with us. Yes. Okay. Well, that's what I was thinking that they were. Well, that's the thing, I thought, okay, there's 6 already. Yeah, that if they could just find 4 more. But some people say, God knew what he was doing. He was going to burn the place down, and even though he was giving this bargaining with Abraham, it was going to be useless. But I'm not altogether sure that God works that way. The thing is rigged from the beginning. And I think that's what if Abraham and Lot, if they could have converted some people, then they might not have been destroyed. But we're just not privy to everything that happened there. It's a very short story for a whole lot of things that happened. And in the things we'll see next week, we're going to see some more about Lot. Well, Well, we have to remember, I don't think God wanted to destroy these people, just like you said. I don't think he wants to destroy anyone. He wouldn't have anybody to come to not being saved. We got to remember, everybody in hell, God loves. He loves everybody. And those people are there against everything that God did for them. And we have to look at the justice of God and say, okay, God is fair. And we have to remember that he's doing exactly the same thing for us. What we have, we got to follow. Or we wind up on the wrong side of the street, so to speak. Okay. Thank you all for coming. See you next week, Lord willing.